That's the vibes. Yes, boss. Money tutu, money tutu, money
Dude,
tutu, money tutu.
I'm weak.
Yeah, yeah. He's gonna put me in the Ghani mindset anyway.
OD.
Sun is
Now,
going
I was
down.
listening to Kojo Antwi versus Dead Lumba yesterday on
Oh yeah, I
Instagram.
forgot.
I was all
Damn.
jokes.
Forgot. I had that saved too.
Yo.
And they put out the whole video.
Nah, they was on live.
I know, but I need them to put on video. Damn.
Yeah, man. 'Cause at first, I was anticipating that it was gonna be actually Dead Lumba and Kojo Antwi, but I'm like, they don't even have Instagram accounts. So
So who was it? Was it just like their songs being played?
yeah, yeah. It was like some DMV guys, DMV DJs, and you know,
Okay.
playing their music.
Nah, that's a Kojo Antwi would win that battle though.
That's what I was saying, yo. I
Yeah,
was saying that.
yeah. Daddy Lumba ain't gonna win that battle. Kojo Antwi is the winner of that battle.
Astro, man. Like
Yeah, they should have had him. They should have had them actually on though.
yo, that would have been golden.
Anyway, let's get this.
Talk, talk.
Daddy, I know. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. All right, ladies and gents. We've all been waiting for it.
All right, so let's get into it. TCA, the Clever African, back at it. Today's topic, which is led by Paul, on the financial breakdown or the economic breakdown in the market. We're going to be talking about what's going on. The way in which you described it is the recent stock market rally, the real deal, or a pump fake, right? Is it a slam dunk, or is somebody just faking before they get to the basket?
Could be a pump fake.
Yeah.
Why?
I mean, we don't have an NBA anymore, so we might as well have our own ball games out
Might as
here.
well just throw it in, Like we're supposed to be playing the playoffs right now, but
Right.
stock market is our playoffs. Yeah, but
So what do you think?
Well, okay, so I think everybody knows how crazy the markets were moving towards the latter part of March and how equities basically dropped like 30% from like their all-time highs. So ever since then, really, it's just been volatile. I mean, you've had days where the S&P 500, which is, a basket of 500 companies essentially, just move 10% in one day and then 5% the next, and then the next day it'll move 11% up or down. It's just crazy. And essentially what had to happen was that the central authorities or the central banks and the governments had to step in and provide essentially liquidity in order to stabilize things, right? So by liquidity, by liquidity, I mean essentially cash, right? They had to inject money into the system because that's how it operates. Essentially, it needs some sort of ebb and flow. It's like the human body, right? Like 2/3 of our body is water, and the less water that we have in our bodies, we see that the human body faces those consequences. You suffer from dehydration. Your organs might fail. So that's essentially how financial markets work. We need within the financial markets, we need money to be flowing in and out of it in order to make the markets essentially. So ever since then, things have stabilized in the financial markets. However, in the real world, you kind of see like a disconnect between the real economy and the stock markets. And what I mean by that is obviously we've seen numbers and like we know people, and some of us might even be out of work. Some of us might have lost our income, and you know, I think here in the United States, it's probably past 30 million,
Yeah.
30 million unemployed people in the United States. And
Mm,
that's a lot of people that have
mm,
lost jobs and have lost essentially um, their livelihood, basically.
mm,
But even with all that, um, even with all these bad economic numbers that are coming, you kind of see how the stock market reacts to it. And sometimes it doesn't really match up, right? So if we see that unemployment is trending higher, why or how come stocks go higher with, higher unemployment? It's kind of like an oxymoron, right? Like less people working means, less people making money. That means less people have disposable income
mhm.
to essentially like do other stuff with it, i.e., buy stocks. So how come that's the case if people don't have money to spend? How come the stock market is going up?
Well, that's a good breakdown. I think you looked at it in multiple points. Like you looked at it from the market perspective, um, and then you look at it from the humanistic perspective, or like the everyday life, what we're seeing, the reality outside in the streets, right? Um, well, we know that there's liquidity or there's cash flow being put into a lot of American big businesses, more so the larger corporations, and so that they can sustain themselves. I mean, we've been used to this seeing corporate bailouts for such a long time
Mm-hmm.
because they're soon to be the ones who are employing people, and in so many ways, they are the ones who are employing people on a larger scale, which we're seeing. So some companies, a lot of companies are being able to maintain themselves from that. Like, and of course, there'll be big firms that are also applying for small business loans,
Yeah,
which they definitely, especially like law firms and financial firms and things like that. And so we'll see the market boost up in certain aspects, right? Now, when we look at it, like seeing the growth hasn't been to the point where it was in January, February of 2020, even, right? And the market has dropped lower than it had in 2018, to be honest. Like, so, I mean, it was just something that people weren't prepared for or expected at all, which in two ways, it's an opportunity if you have cash flow, which we did write about in the Clever African article last year talking about what we're predicting to be able to occur in 2020. So people should actually look at the article which we wrote about. Most of the things we talked about have actually come to place, like almost all of them. So it's going back again. It's like those who have cash flow saw that as an opportunity to make investments. Right? On March 20th and between March 20th to March 23rd, that was a time where the markets had fallen down the most. I'm talking about every stock index that I looked at, for the most point, was below its value, and that's the best time to buy, right? And so yes, it shook up the market, it shook up a lot of things. Like people who are in the market obviously are afraid. A lot of people react based on emotion, took out their, sold their shares or were moving or liquidating their shares and things like that. So they'll have some type of money, so they won't lose money. But at the end of the day, it's about what type of investor you are, right?
yeah,
So we're looking at the question again: is it a pump fake, or is this a real deal, or is this a slam dunk? And I think honestly, this is just the first tier of such a big downturn. And I think with humans and with us being outside, I see people walking outside right now as I'm speaking. And yesterday I went out, and people are like trying to get back to normal. People are not social distancing as they would have before, and I feel like we don't really have a vaccine out, but there's ways of people taking care of themselves, and it's like mask city everywhere. Doesn't mean that it's over. It's just that people are just over it, right? So what is this? I feel like this might have another turn. It might hit another stride in the next couple months, right? Now they'll be more prepared for it, so I don't think it'll be the same. But some places and some industries are going to go up, and some industries are going to see a hit in the
yeah,
market. So it's about looking at it. So I do think it's a pump fake. I mean, to an extent, right? It fell.
Damn. Yo. Oh man, I think Mills cut out. Shoot. Hello. Oh wait. Hold on. Yeah. We're back. We're back.
Okay. Yeah, I was like saying it's like it looks like it's a pump fake, but it might not be, right? Or then it might be, right? So the way it might be is like, like Jordan going to the basket, he's dribbling, he's crossing over, he can shake somebody real quick, pump fake, like, you know what I mean? Do a little shake and bake. Then before he gets to the rim, he pumps fakes you as if he's about to shoot. Then he switches to the other hand and then does a little layup. You know what I mean?
Last
He's close.
dance.
You know what I'm saying? So it's like it's truly a dance. You never know what's really going to go on, but we have enough metrics to see what's the possibility of things happening. And then looking at society, all the economists, all the financial people who focus on financial markets couldn't have predicted this joint. They had no idea. They were looking at trajectories like, oh, this is going to go up, but they don't know coronavirus was coming. You know what I'm saying? So the market can change based on nature itself. You know, and so I think there could be another pump fake, a more visible one though, which people can plan for because they see this thing coming. And the important thing right now, I think, is that people are losing their jobs, and I think it just gives us a reminder, like, okay, how do we design a system so that we can all still survive, and have enough money when we're in an opportunity where we're working, right, to be able to have something for ourselves. And then when we're not, like, how do we continue to make it a point so that we're still doing all right? I think that's what the question brings here with this market turn. It's like, yes, it might affect a certain group of people, but there's people who already don't even have the money. That's what I end up thinking about. Like,
Yeah.
what do these people do, and how do they survive? And that's the true. I think that's the true test of a nation. It's not in its wealthy, but it's folks who are middle class and those who are living on the poverty lines or living between those two lines. Like, how do those people survive? If those people are surviving, there's less of it. That means the country, to me, is doing pretty well. You know, like, if we look at the United States and we look at all the other countries, um, there's a stimulus plan being passed around, but has it been enough? Like, if somebody was to question that, all these people being taken care of, is everybody fine? And I think individually in the communities, people do it, but as a nation, like, what is that begs the question, and I'm not the one to answer that. It's for everybody else to answer that, right? Do you think we're doing the best that we could be doing? That's why I think it can be it can be a pump fake. And mind you, like, some people, the checks would have benefited them in a time where they weren't going to get that. So some people are winning in that state or in that situation. People who are making more money than they would have before, and they're staying home, spending less or whatnot. So it's a very interesting thing to study. But I think overall, for me, it's like, how do we continue from here? What is the new norm?
Yeah.
And I think that's what will affect the market at the end of the day. What is the new norm? Because it has to settle at some point.
Some point, right? Yeah. And I want to bounce on that point of when is it gonna settle. So I think yesterday, Warren Buffett, he did a presentation, like a 4 hour long presentation,
Mm-hmm.
and within his presentation, he was being asked questions about his positionings and how he's thinking about moving his money. Mind you, during the first quarter, so during the months of January through March, I think his company lost almost roughly, I think $200 billion.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, no one is safe essentially from
Yeah.
when the markets crash, right? Even
Yeah.
the wealthiest of investors, no one
Yeah.
is safe. So he was asked, what do you think about certain industries, specifically the airline industries, right? Because we know that Warren Buffett has invested a large portion of his wealth into companies like American Airlines, Delta, essentially the airlines. And he said straight up, I sold all of my positions, all my stakes in the airline industry because he thinks that going forward, the world will change for airlines, right? So we're hearing this omen from someone that has been around the block essentially for a long time, right?
Mm-hmm.
And to me, he sounds a little, I wouldn't say worried, but he does sound concerned, right? He
Yeah.
sounds like an individual because this is someone that has seen market crashes before. He's lived through
Many times.
right. He's
Yeah.
lived through 2008. He's lived through 9/11. He's lived the
60s.
dot-com crash. You know, he's
Yeah.
led the 60s, the 50s, all that. He's lived through all these crashes, right?
Yeah.
But this one in particular is something that is strange because unlike the previous crashes that were caused by human error or, human malinvestment, this is different. This is caused by a natural event.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, you don't really know, you know, the how things will play out, right? Because it's nature.
Yeah.
You can't really predict what nature does.
Yeah.
It does whatever it wants, right? So to that end, I want to know whether or not other investors, i.e., like people like us, like small guys that don't have the hundreds of billions that Warren Buffett has, should we be, listening to Warren Buffett, or should we be like, contrarians? Like, should we just like, I guess,
Mm.
do the opposite of what he's saying, right?
Right. I mean, I think that's a good question, but that's any good financial advisor will tell you at a point that it's at the end of the day, yes, you can listen to advice, right? You should consider all people who have done it for a long time have some type of knowledge and have some type of theory and practice to it. Doesn't mean that they're completely correct, but what they're saying does have hold value, right? But at the end of the day, it comes to you as the individual, right? What is your goal for investing, and why do you want to invest, and what are the things that you believe in, and where do you think the world is going to go? Because at the end of the day, we all have a mind, and just as Warren Buffett was able to do this for some time, doesn't mean he's going to be always correct. Like I feel like for me, like his point about airline industries is true, because he also has such large shares of the airline
Right.
industry. Like he's
Mm-hmm.
taking such a large hit, so it has a larger effect on him. It doesn't mean that that's not somebody else's opportunity to invest in a certain airline. Like people need to travel at any point, right? Maybe getting a couple of shares in a certain airline based on what they're looking like. American Airlines has the most, right? Like most fleets, most cargo. Then you have Delta and stuff like that. These are the airlines of which we use to go around the world. Right? They go to so many different places. So um, they're also getting funded from the government. They're getting bailouts. Like there's specifically money moved for the airlines. Straight up. It's a form of transportation, right? So at the end of the day, these stocks might even grow just a few. He probably got it at the point where it was more expensive. He's lost a lot of money. But if I'm buying it now and I expect it to grow, then I'm making profit. I'm not losing. You get me?
Hmm.
So for him, yes. And for large investors who had their money in there from a time where it wasn't that much, yes. But the thing is for me is like this, right? If the opening price, the opening price of a stock is, let's say, $10, right? And I've gone to a point where the stock has been up to 60, 70, $80, right? And I bought it under its opening price and it was like $6.
Mm-hmm.
And now the price is $8. I still have profit. Do you see what I'm saying? Opening price is $10. I bought at $6. The price is $8, right? There was a point where I could have stopped and taken my money out, but I wanted to be a long-term investor. But I still have made profit over the years. Like, right, you can take into inflation and the amount of time you put it, but you still have a profit. And that's the way I look at it. It's like I'm not putting money in there that I'm not willing to also lose because it is something that I have understood before going into this thing. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So again, it's back to the fundamentals. It's not so much about the money. It's about what has actually occurred. Have I still gained or have I lost? Losing a lot definitely hurts, especially when you're that wealthy. And so you got to cut your losses in some places. But I don't think that theory applies on every spectrum. It depends on where you are in your life and who you are as an individual. If I bought 50 shares at $6, and now it's at $8. I made a $2 profit on all those each share. That's 2 times 50, which is $100. You know what I'm saying? So if I decide to take it out now, I've still made profit, even though at some point it probably was like at 200, 300, 400, 1,000. Right? I didn't know. It's natural,
Yeah.
you know. And Warren Buffett himself is a long-term investor, so there's a reason why he invested in those stocks for a long time. I think over time the industry is going to boost back up because people need to move around. People are going to be more scared, and which is a very valid point from him. People are going to be more scared to travel, but at some point, I believe that the world will go back into that place where individuals want to move around and explore. It's already happened so much so. You know.
Right. Yeah. I was reading an article not too long ago, and it was mentioning how even like after the events of 9/11, it took almost a decade for the airline industry to like go back to normal,
Yeah.
because obviously like nobody wanted to get on the plane just because of
Right.
getting hijacked and stuff like that.
Right.
And even with this, it's gonna take time in order
Right.
to like instill back that confidence within people to get them to fly to different destinations. But it's all about timing, right? It's all about
Right.
restoring that confidence back into people, and yeah, getting that normalcy back into people, essentially.
Right. And we have social media at this point, right? Everybody's like, when outside gets back open, I'm going here, going here, going here.
Yeah.
It's actually driving people to not take those things for granted. So there's a whole different generation of individuals. They like school. We know it's a whole different generation of individuals because even during coronavirus at its peak, people were still trying to make those travels. People were still going to Florida to party. People were still seeing those cheap
We're
flights
not
and
condoning
transporting.
it. We're not condoning it.
We're not condoning it. We're just talking about the reality
Yeah.
of the situation, right? People were still doing it anyhow because the flights were cheaper. People want to get out. So the mindset of the nation has changed. And that was also something different. Like people got bombed. You know,
Right. Yeah.
it was a different feel towards travel. Now it's about the destination and where people are going and what's happening in the destination. If people are New York had the craziest cases. I'm a New Yorker, right? And people are still walking around. You get me? So some place where there's fewer cases, I don't know about people going Italy for now. You know what I mean? Because it's had the most, and that might be the place where people are caution. But other places where that didn't get hit like that, people are still wanting to go. You know, they want to live their life, and so that's the main problem which we're having now. Because people want to live their life so badly that they're not trying to stick to certain rules, right? That are set in place to keep everybody safe. You know, because naturally humans want to explore, right? In a lot of European countries, matter of fact, I was looking at this the other day, like you deciding to bust out of jail and escape isn't a crime charged against you because they believe that the human's nature is to want freedom. You get me? So even thinking about that concept is beautiful in itself. That even they're not even gonna press no charges against you if you try to escape because you want freedom. You know what I mean? It's natural in humans, and people also want to be comfortable and have the wealth that they need. You know, so I think things will definitely get back into normal, and things will be a new normal, but things will get to a normal. Right, like all the commercials I'm seeing now is targeted towards being at home, home videos and stuff like that. I'm like, yeah, they quick on their feet. They want to keep people engaged, customers engaged, and all that. So yes, things are going to go up. The market's going to go up in certain places. People will adjust. You know.
Yeah. It's all about adaptability too, right? Because even industries like, higher education. I was scheduled to take my GMAT in a few weeks, actually.
Me too.
Yeah. And yeah, they sent an email saying, all the test sites have been closed, so you might have to do it online. And yeah, like everything has to adapt, everything has to change. But at the end of the day, the businesses that, want to keep their customers, they will adapt and change. And those that aren't able to adapt and change will, suffer the consequences.
Yeah, that's how it goes. And so it's about at the end of the day, it's about seeing the disruption before the disruption occurs. This is the disruption. It's like who's prepared for this, and A company like Zoom, who has focused on this thing, is going to be the talked about thing in the next 5 years, like 3 years. You know what I'm saying? And now it's going to bring more competition. Who's going to design a platform to fix some of the issues that Zoom, couldn't do? But everybody's going to refer to it as Zoom. We've had Uvu for those times. We have Skype. We had all FaceTime and everything, but everybody's talking about Zoom. You see what I'm saying? So it's how do you prepare yourself so that you are the disruption instead of being part of what disrupts you? And that's what I'm saying. At the end of the day, is reflecting on ourselves as individuals. Like, how do we live a lifestyle in which we don't take things for granted, and to reflect and to constantly thinking ahead, also looking at the past and looking at our present, to cherish the times that we're in, but to always put our foot a bit forward to the future. And I think if we do that as individuals, then we'll be prepared. That's what we have TCA for. Like, we sat down and thought about these things earlier on, and we wrote articles to help people who, just like ourselves, going through similar things, asking ourselves about the market, asking ourselves about entrepreneurship, asking ourselves about our daily lifestyle, and supporting individuals like ourselves who just want to succeed. And that's what it comes to. It's questioning yourself as a person, taking in the advice of other people like Warren Buffett, Bill Gates, all these people, hearing it. But at the end of the day, for me, it's like I talk to my God. You know what I'm saying? And then figuring out how my journey is designed, how my purpose is designed, and where I need to go. So if the market even pump fakes me or hits a slam dunk, it's like, man, I could have made that move, but I didn't. Cool. How do I move forward? What can I do now? So that's where we're at now. The market hit a low turn on March 20th, but people still have opportunity to invest into it if they have that money, right? And that's something that's also a privilege. If you have the ability to have that cash flow, already. So there's that. I think at the end of the day, for me, for this conversation, it comes down to who cares if the market is being pump faked or slam dunk. It's about what can I do as an individual today to better myself, to prepare for tomorrow, while still being okay about today.
Mm-hmm. These are wise words, man.
Yeah, man. So, man, any last words before we close it out?
What was I gonna say even? Yeah, I think yeah, we've made a good, this was a good discussion. We made some good points, and ultimately, yeah, we just want to leave people with just that, positive message of, if whatever you think about,
Mm-hmm.
make it a long-term decision, like play the long game, right? You don't want to how do I say it? You don't want to like lillygag and not be indecisive and stuff like that. There's a time to be indecisive, and there's a time to know, the things that you want, and how long you want it for, essentially.
Yes. Yeah.
It could be in finance, it could be in stocks, and this could just be a general thing in real life. Just
Yeah. There's a time for everything, and to everything there's a time. And I think that's one of the biggest lessons we learn, just from the market in general. But that's the TCA jam for today. Take time, bruv. And things. Yeah, just take time. But that's it, man. I think we're done for today, and hopefully people can reflect on this.
Yes, sir.
Signing out. Check out the website, thecleverafrican.com.
Don't forget to subscribe.
Yes, we'll have a lot more. A lot more coming. It's gonna get better over time. We just started. Yeah.
It's hard, but you're gonna get it.
Yeah. All right, folks. Signed out.